What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com. Your favorite blind film critic, hopefully. This is Dune Part 2. Click that subscribe button because I want to get you now. I want to get you hooked before I start speaking. This is directed by Denis Villeneuve. It has audio description currently now on Max. It's done by Deluxe, narrated by William Michael Redman. And the film has a giant cast. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya. It's got Javier Bardem. If you saw my Dune Part 1 video, I joked because I stumbled and I was like, Benicio or Javier, I don't know. And I couldn't tell the difference between it's Javier Bardem. It's got Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson, Stellan Skarsgård, Florence Pugh, Charlotte Rampling, Dave Bautista. I just think, yeah, there's a large cast present for this film. So, and of course, Austin Butler. People think he's going to get an Oscar nomination. No. But you can think that. That's fine. It's in your mind. And I love Denis Villeneuve. I do. And I think he is one of the most gifted directors working right now. So that's got going, this is going in his favor in spades. I am not familiar with the Dune franchise. I never read the book. I didn't even watch the original movie, the David Lynch version that seems to be polarizing. I haven't watched it, so I can't really comment on it, but it seems to be polarizing. So, and this is my first time watching Dune Part 2. Now, I needed Dune Part 1 twice before I kind of understood what was going on. And it's kind of the same with Dune Part 2, although, because it is a Part 2, I do have Part 1, and I did just watch Part 1, so it did help, and I did feel like I had a better grounded understanding of this world going into Part 2 because of that. So I started off in a better place for Part 2 than I did with Part 1, where I was like, what is this? What is this world? I know this isn't like world creation. It's not like what Zack Snyder's trying to do with the Rebel Moon franchise, which is, it's really hard when you have all of this lore and stuff that you're trying to like throw at people. And Dune feels like it has a lot of lore and it's trying to throw it at people. And it's benefiting from the fact that there are a lot of people who have read Dune and a lot of people who are familiar with the franchise and know everything about it. And they're really excited to see their favorite book put on film. It's me. It's a me problem. So I'm not trying to say that you know, it's bad because I don't understand it because I didn't read the book. That's not a fair assumption. That doesn't make something bad because I don't know what it is. However, it is going to skew how I feel about things, what my opinion is, how much I love it. I hadn't read the Lord of the Rings books before I saw the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I feel like what Peter Jackson did with those was he broke down the story in a way in which it could be enjoyed by anybody, whether or not you read those books or not. I don't feel like Denis done that with Dune. I feel like there's a little bit it's a little bit at arm's length here. It's a little bit like, hope you read the book. You know, it's a little bit like, you'll love the visual effects. You'll love, you know, that, like, he's hoping that people will love that aspect, that people just like watching his films because they're beautiful. He directs beautiful films. I haven't been blind my whole life. I know what Denis what his look and feel is. Blade Runner looked fantastic. And he does benefit from that. He benefits from being given a budget and being able to shoot a film that looks, I'm assuming, stunning. Based on everything that I've heard, this film probably looks stunning. So there's that. So you get to, if I was sighted and I got to sit in a theater on a big screen and watch this film, I'm sure to some extent I would be wowed by the visual effects. So that's taken from me because now the visual effects are described. I have to say that William Michael Redman did a fantastic job of describing. There was like one point where, like, there was like a body on the ground, and like ants were crawling on it, and he even like pointed out the ant, like a few ants, like there were more ants, but like a few of them started to crawl into the ear. I was like, that's really specific. Like, you're not even just saying and they're crawling in, like you're letting me know that like less ants are crawling in the air. Like like I'm surprised he didn't count them and be like, it's 7 ants are crawling into the air. It's just it was so immersive. Um, his audio description is so fantastic and immersive that I feel like I really had the best chance at being able to understand and follow this film because he had such tremendous audio description. But still, I feel like I don't fully understand this film. It's very likely that because of when this is being released and the Oscars, that I will end up doing a second look at Dune Part 2 later, months from now, um, just to freshen up for award season. So I will likely review this film again from the perspective of seeing it a second time. Technically, my review that exists on my channel of Dune 1 is a second look because I wasn't doing YouTube reviews at the time when I saw Dune the first time. So anyway, it's a little bit hard to understand. I'm a big fan of Rebecca Ferguson. I think she's great. I think she has reduced screen time a little bit here. It's a little bit more balanced. I mean, she's in like the whole film, but she just doesn't have necessarily the same meat to her role that she was given. Instead, like, Zendaya has way more to do. Like, oh, I don't even. But she must have looked at the script for Dune Part 1 and been like, why do people hire me? And then she'll get the script for Dune Part 2 and be like, oh, I see. So, um, huge increase in screen time for Zendaya. So yeah, it balances it out, and I thought Zendaya did a good job. I mean, I'm not gonna knock it. I thought it was fine. The problem with this film is though that every once in a while, and I'd say probably Rebecca runs into it the least. Rebecca seems to be able to handle whatever her line is. And to some extent, some of the other actors, like Charlotte Rampling, I think pretty much everything she does is fantastic. And you can kind of see like who's really, really good. Like who's a really good actor. Because some people are given a line and they don't know how to read it. So they just kind of say it, and Denis just kind of kept it. And it doesn't really work. It doesn't really fit. And it feels awkward. It feels kind of stilted. And there's a line where like Chalamet is talking about like, well, then I must convince them that, and it felt like acting to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it felt like he was forcing himself to say a line that he didn't know how to say, that he didn't understand why his character was saying it, but he knew it was a line that he had to say. And Josh Brolin had a line that was like that. Chalamet sadly has a couple of them. Um, that scene when he comes to Zendaya towards the end, and he's like, "I love you until I die." Whatever he said, I don't know. It's just like it had nothing to it. It was just like I think he's a fantastic actor sometimes. Beautiful Boy is such a wonderful example of what Timothée Chalamet is capable of. It's such a shame he wasn't nominated for that, because when I think about Chalamet as an actor, anytime somebody tries to come up to me and be like, "Oh, he's just a pretty face," I'm like, "Have you seen Beautiful Boy?" Like, he is tremendous in Beautiful Boy. But here he's given lines that he doesn't know what they are, and he doesn't know how to say them, and he just says them, and we just forgive it because the film is pretty. But he's not the only one. So a couple people have a couple of lines. It's here and there, and you'll hear it, and you're like, you didn't know what that line was, did you? And somebody told you you had to say it perfectly and not verbatim, because there are actors that'll take a line and they'll spin it, and it'll be like said, it's like it'll be the gist of the original line, but it'll be said in a way that fits them. And a lot of times actors specifically actors who have their own style, their own way of speaking that we've just gotten sort of used to. Actually, even have people who punch up scripts and change dialogue to make it so that this is a real thing, by the way. I actually read an interview with the guy who was doing it for Vince Vaughn back in the day when Vince Vaughn was popular and popping up and everything. Somebody would write a script, and there's a guy that he's not credited because all his only job is to go in there and look at the lines, just the lines that Vince Vaughn says, and make them so that it sounds like Vince Vaughn. For films that are written prior to him signing on, his job was to go through and punch it up so that it sounded more like Vince Vaughn, so he was improvising less on set. So, and it's my understanding that this happens more with actors like that. You know, Eddie Murphy and Will Ferrell and some other people have people who have punched up scripts for them who just go for the one character, just their lines, and they know how to convert lines to make it sound like that actor. So Chalamet could have benefited from that, from somebody who really just understood who Chalamet was and just rewritten some of the lines so that he nails all of them. Because there are some scenes here where he's fantastic, where he's like fully in it. Like he's giving it 110%. But then like every once in a while there's just a line and I'm just like, you didn't know how to say that, did you? And then he didn't catch it. He didn't care. He just put it in. And he was like, yeah, that film's great. Or maybe they tried to shoot that scene 100 times and that was the best take he could get. I don't know, but who knows? But yeah, just a couple line readings. It's funny when I don't have the visual aspect of it, I'm listening to sound. A lot of times I talk about like sound design. The sound design of this film is phenomenal. The score to this film is great, but not in a way in which I will remember it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't definitively have its own Dune Part 2 vibe. There's a Dune vibe, certainly. So, like, I feel like if I heard music, I'd be like, oh, that's from Dune. But I wouldn't know if it was from Part 1 or Part 2. Just like, there are, realistically, like, you know that there's Star Wars stuff. And I'm sure there are some Star Wars fans that are, because it's fucking Star Wars, that can tell you exactly, and they can like tell you exactly what's happening on the scene because they've seen the film 200 times. But there are also people who are pretty much casual fans who will recognize, and they'll be like, well, that's Star Wars. Which movie is it from? I don't know. All of them? So, yeah, that's kind of how it feels like for me. Like, I understand now the concept of Dune music, and I think it's great, but I don't know that Part 2 is necessarily better than Part 1. The sound design is, once again, reliably great. I'm sure the visual effects are phenomenal. I'm sure the costume design is phenomenal. I'm sure the production design is phenomenal. From everything I got out of the audio description, those would be natural nominations that I would give. Editing, probably. I'm thinking, sure. Cinematography, yeah, sure, of course. I mean, those feel like basically every below the line nomination I can think of feels appropriate for this film. So, I'm sure it's going to rack up nominations. But then when we get above the line and you start asking me to talk about like how much I like the screenplay, how much I like the actors, that's where I get kind of like a question mark. And even though Dune is not going to be in my top 10 for the year, I still really want Denis Villeneuve to get a director nomination because I think what he's doing is spectacular. And I always think what he's doing is spectacular. So I'm going to be rooting for Denis Villeneuve regardless of what grade I'm about to give this film. So I think it's basically the same as the first. There seems to be a lot of debate about which film is better, the first or the second one. I think they complement each other. I'm sure now that the film is available for home video, there are a lot of people who are watching it back to back and seeing like the Dune experience. The problem is that Dune Part 2 ends in such a way where, yeah, it's pretty obvious there's a third film coming. So it also doesn't help the fact that Max actually like ran a promotion before this for the TV series. So it's like, there's more Dune. Just, we have more Dune coming in many forms. So it's like you can't really celebrate the finality of it. There's still there's like there's well there's more to come. So I feel like I just watched The Two Towers, which ironically, after I've watched all three of them, I actually think Two Towers is personally my favorite. Only because Return of the King tries to end like 9 times before it actually finally ends. It has like 9 endings. It just goes on forever. Anyway, yeah, so Dune Part 2 is likely a stunning feat of achievement for those of you who can see. For those of us who can't, I have to listen to the dialogue. I have to listen to the line delivery. And sometimes that doesn't quite trip up. It doesn't quite get there. It doesn't quite land. There are a couple lines in here that I had to listen to that I was like, I don't know, man. Um, but yeah, it does still have some strong performances. If I had to give anybody an Oscar nomination out of this film, it would be Rebecca Ferguson. Even though she's featured, it would be like a it's carrying over from Dune Part One. I don't know who would get a nomination out of this film. Of the people who have the most screen time, I don't think anybody was flawless. I don't think anybody gave a flawless performance. I guess maybe Austin Butler gives an interesting performance, but I still couldn't rally around that as I don't know. I would have a really hard time. So I would still just pick Rebecca Ferguson and just be a really delayed nomination for her. So yeah, it's currently available on Max. You can watch the whole thing if you want. But I'm giving it actually the same grade. I'm gonna say Dune Part 2 is a B plus. It's the grade I gave Part 1. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not like jumping all over the Dune franchise, but I'm also not jumping all over it. There's just a little part of it. It doesn't have the ability to wow me with its $200 million visual effects. What it did wow me with was the audio description, which was fantastic. It is one of the best audio descriptions of the year, easily, hands down. He's working overtime to try to give me all of the audio description he possibly can, but there's only just so much you can do. You know, audio description can't give me every single camera angle and shot and color grading. And I mean, I loved when he said Blood Moon, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, he is trying so hard to bring me the best visual experience I could possibly have as a blind person. But it still isn't. It doesn't quite do the whole thing. For a film that is relying upon it, it's made for sighted audiences, and I acknowledge that. So I'm going to be a little bit more excited about some other films. It doesn't mean I don't like action sci-fi films anymore. I just think this one lacked a little bit in, like I said, I didn't quite follow this franchise. I think Denis is not quite translating it in a way where you can immediately understand it in the same way that like Peter Jackson did, because I hadn't read the Lord of the Rings books and I had no problem following those films. I also had no problem following the Harry Potter films, although I did read the first book, but I didn't read any of the others. I read them later. I read them after the fact. So, yeah, not quite the same comparison, but I didn't read Lord of the Rings. I'll admit to that. And, I had no problem. So, yeah, this is a review. We'll see if anybody likes it. I'm sure if you have thoughts, throw them in the comments and yell at me. But that's it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.